Okay, welcome back everyone. Dmitry here, and today we're going to be looking at the architecture of the Xplat and NX narwhal solution. So in the last tutorial we set up an nx-workspace with an Xplat library in it, and now we're going to be looking at what we've got set up there. So the folder that we're in, the directory, is this my workspace directory that we've set up in the last tutorial. And inside this directory, we have this: apps, libs, node modules, testing, tools, Xplat. So by default, an nx-workspace would set up only the libs and apps directories. But this time around, we also have an Xplat directory over here. So when we are making a project, the way it works is our libs contains all the it contains all the shared code, like code which can be shared between Angular, can be shared between native apps, for example NativeScript, code that can be shared for writing APIs with systems like Nest.js, for example. So over here I could just write all code is shared. Okay, now from here it gets imported into the Xplat architecture. Like if your project, like, you know, when we did the prompts in the beginning, it was asking for whether we want to use an Xplat supporting architecture. So Xplat supporting architecture is in here. Because we only created one web project, it is for our Angular web project. And over here we have core and features. So core is the core functionality of the system, and then features are all the different Angular features that will be included for example, all the web projects. Or if we set up a NativeScript app, there will be a different folder which will be called NativeScript instead of web, and it will have all the folders, all the directories which will support all the NativeScript projects. And it can be very useful when we need, for example, to set up effects for Redux, as what we will be doing later, that will only be working under certain conditions. Like for example, for web, when we're using something like that, we want to store some data in the browser, we would be using local storage in the browser, but the same kind of functionality is not available in the native solutions like NativeScript because they do not run in the browser, so we need different kind of code to support that. And that is why we separate this kind of code between, for example, web projects and NativeScript projects. It's just right now we don't have a NativeScript directory here because we didn't create a NativeScript project. In any case, over here we're going to take a look at the libs one more time. So you can see the folder structure is pretty much very similar. So core, feature, and in the Xplat we also have for each type of project, for example for web over here, core, feature. So they kind of keep up with the standard here. Maintaining it so that we have our libs getting imported to Xplat. So over here we have platform, platform specific shared code. So over here the platforms can be, for example, web and, for example, NativeScript. Okay, but over here, after the Xplat stage, we have the apps stage. So the code from libs gets imported into Xplat, And then code from Xplat, web, or whatever gets imported into the apps, whatever app you're developing. So for example, web app will be importing the code from the Xplat web folder, and native script app would be importing code from the Xplat native script folder, which we don't have right now here. So that is essentially an app specific code. So apps is app specific code. Now all of these codes over here, all these areas, they have what's called an import barrels. So over here, index, for example, it exports the core modules, and pretty much all of the system has all these index files around. Now, one of the most important files to know about when working with Xplat and NX architecture is in the root, the workspace JSON. So it is this file right here, and over here in this file we have pretty much the description of all the different directories that we have set up here. So over here we see in the projects we have the libs set up here, we have the Xplat, and over here we have the different projects. So for example, for ng tutorial over here we have different architect configurations. This is where we can find how, for example, we want to build, like if in packages JSON we're missing some kind of code. So if we go to package JSON over here, we see start, web, and ng tutorial, right? And then over here we have all the different commands to run tests and that sort of thing. But what if, for example, I wanted to specifically run tests on this particular project? This can be found here. It can be found in the workspace JSON, and under ng tutorial we should have a test section somewhere around here. So over here we have the serve section. This is the one for the for when we run a development server, and over here we have test. So what we could do is we could basically write, instead of serve, over here we have test. So let me see. You see nx serve and ng tutorial, right? Over here I could write, I could add one more entry, and instead of start I could write test in the package.json, and instead of serve I could write test. And now if I write in this folder that I'm in, npm run this command that I just added, we will see if this is going to work. There we go. We just had one simple test because this is just the starter app, and I can just run a test on this app only without running tests on Xplat or libs folder. So this is it for now in here. One more thing is what we're working with was tsconfig. tsconfig base and tsconfig.json that we had to add in the last tutorial. When we first created this tsconfig JSON, we only had this extends tsconfig base JSON here. But when we created the Angular app on top of that, we added these extra directories here, these extra import barrels. So whenever we import things inside of our projects now, we can use these to import libraries, for example, from libs folder, Xplat directory, or Xplat web. So this is where we know what sort of shortcuts to use to do the imports within our project. Well, I hope that more or less made sense, and as I continue to make tutorials for this, I will continue to explain this in more and more detail. But this is it for this tutorial. So like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you think about all these. And I will see you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one. Bye-bye.